It was the kind of summer that hummed with quiet change, thick with the scent of cut hay and something else I couldn't name yet. Something that tugged at my chest every time Eli looked at me and smiled without saying much at all. I had come to his family's farm in Lancaster County to unplug, as my therapist called it, a 6-week work exchange meant to clear my head after a messy breakup and the burnout of too many years in a fast city. I told myself I was here for the silence, the simplicity, the morning chores, but I knew that wasn't all. Eli was the second oldest son in the Yoder family, 23 like me, with broad shoulders, quiet eyes, and the kind of presence that made everything else feel a little less loud. He didn't talk much. When he did, it was slow, thoughtful, with the weight of someone who only spoke when he had something worth saying. That silence used to intimidate me. Now it filled every space between us with something electric. The first time I saw him, he was shirtless in the barn loft, tossing down bales of hay like they weighed nothing. Sunlight carved golden lines across, his chest and arms, dust clinging to the sweat on his skin. He glanced down, caught me staring, and just nodded, like he already knew. We'd been working side by side for 3 weeks now, mornings milking cows, afternoons fixing fences or cleaning stalls. Our words were few, but his presence always settled into my bones like warmth. He smelled like cedar and earth. I learned to recognize the rhythm of his footsteps behind me, the sound of him humming quietly when he thought no one was listening. Today was different, though. Today the rest of his family was gone for a wedding 2 counties over, and he'd asked me, just me, to stay behind and help with the animals. Just the 2 of us. All day. Alone. I told him yes too quickly. He raised an eyebrow, maybe caught the way my voice pitched higher, but said nothing. I kept thinking about the way his hand brushed mine yesterday when we both reached for the same rope, how he didn't pull away fast enough, how I didn't either. I tried not to read into it. But God, I was tired of trying not to feel anything. The barn doors creaked open as I stepped inside, sunlight streaming in behind me like a spotlight. He was already there, leaning over a stall, sleeves rolled up, the curve of his forearms flexing as he worked. He glanced up, gave me that quiet smile that made my knees go soft. "Morning," he said simply, and just like that, something in me shifted. Today was going to change everything. I felt it in my chest like thunder rumbling far off, waiting to break. Eli and I hadn't started off close. For the first week, he barely said more than "mornin'" or "pass the feed." He kept his distance, always working a few feet ahead of me, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into the rhythm of farm life. I figured he didn't trust outsiders, or maybe just didn't know what to make of someone like me, with my city shoes and too many questions. But that changed the morning I nearly knocked over a milk pail, slipping in the muck like some clumsy idiot. Eli caught me by the arm, steady and firm, then laughed. Actually laughed deep and genuine, like it surprised even him. "You always walk like you're fighting gravity," he'd said, grinning as he helped me upright. "It winning?" I'd blinked at him, momentarily stunned. "It's cheating," I shot back, brushing off my jeans. "I'm not built for all this mud warfare." He chuckled again, softer this time. "You'll get used to it." That was the first time he really looked at me, not past me, not through me, but at me. I felt something shift then. Not a lot, just a small tug in my chest, like a thread getting pulled. From there, we found a rhythm. We worked well together. He was methodical, quiet, steady. I was curious, talkative, always moving. Somehow it balanced out. He'd roll his eyes at my questions but answer them anyway. I'd tease him for being all Amish zen, and he'd just smile like he knew, a secret I didn't. One night after dinner, we sat on the porch steps, watching fireflies blink in the field. I asked him if he ever wanted to leave Lancaster to see the world. He paused, thoughtful. Sometimes, he said, but the quiet here, it feels like home. I nodded, pretending I understood. I didn't, not fully, but I wanted to. I wanted to know the world through his eyes. A week later, we were repairing a fence at the far edge of the property when the storm came out of nowhere. No clouds, no warning, just a sharp crack of thunder and then rain like buckets tipping from the sky. Ran, laughing like idiots, soaked through in seconds. The barn was closest, so we ducked inside, slamming the doors behind us just as lightning split the sky. "Damn," I breathed, dripping and grinning. "Guess the weather hates fences." Eli shook the water from his hair and looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. "It's warm in the loft," he said after a beat. "Blankets up there." We climbed the ladder, our clothes clinging to us, every brush of an arm or shoulder a jolt. In the loft, the hay smelled sweet and dry, the wind howling faintly through the slats. He pulled a blanket around his shoulders, then tossed me another. We sat with our knees almost touching, steam rising off our bodies in the cold air. "I like it when you laugh," he said suddenly, voice low. I turned to him, startled. "Yeah?" He nodded, eyes fixed on the rain through a crack in the wall. "Makes this place feel different, lighter." I didn't know what to say to that. My chest felt tight and fluttery, like it was filled with birds trying to get out. "I like your quiet," I murmured, almost too softly to hear over the rain. "It feels safe." We didn't speak for a while after that, just sat there listening to the storm, wrapped in separate blankets but sharing the same space, the same warmth. I found myself watching the way his fingers curled around the edge of his blanket, how his jaw tightened whenever I got too close, how he glanced at me when he thought I wasn't looking. Those little things, the quiet ones, they said more than words ever could, and still I kept pretending I didn't notice. Because once I did, once I let myself see it all for what it was, I knew I'd want more. It was Eli's idea to take the wagon out to the far pasture. One of the younger cows had broken through the fence again, and the sun was already starting its slow descent over the tree line. I offered to go alone, but he shook his head and hitched. The horses anyway, like the decision had already been made. "We'll be back before dark," he said, tossing a small bag of tools into the wagon bed. We weren't. By the time we found the cow and coaxed her back with a bucket of feed, the sky was heavy with dusk and a creeping fog was rolling in from the fields. The wagon wheel hit a rut on the return trip, jarring hard into a dip in the earth, and the crack echoed like a gunshot. One look at the twisted axle and we both knew. We weren't going anywhere tonight. "Wonderful," I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck as the wind picked up. "Stranded in the middle of nowhere. Very little house on the prairie of us." Eli just sighed, already unhitching the horses and tying them to a nearby tree. "We'll shelter in the shed," he said, nodding toward the rickety old structure a few 100 feet away. "It's dry. I've stayed in worse." The shed was just big enough for the two of us, with a few hay bales stacked in the corner, and a pile of worn horse blankets tucked in a crate. It smelled like wood rot and damp straw, but the walls held the wind at bay, and for that I was grateful. We laid out the blankets in a makeshift bed and sat side by side, close enough that our shoulders brushed. I pretended it was because the space was too small, not because my body leaned toward him like it had a will of its own. The silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. Outside, the wind howled and the trees creaked, and inside, my heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. "You cold?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "A little." Without saying more, he reached into the crate and pulled out another blanket. Instead of handing it to me, he shifted closer and draped it over both of us. His thigh pressed against mine, solid and warm. My breath caught. "I'm not trying to make it weird," he said, not looking at me. "Just figured, better to share heat." "No, yeah, makes sense," I said quickly, too quickly. The air was thick between us now, not just with warmth, but with everything unsaid. Every heartbeat felt louder. Every breath felt like a risk. He leaned back against the wooden wall, arms folded beneath. The blanket. I mirrored him, careful not to look directly at him because if I did, I knew my face would give me away. "I've never really done this kind of thing before," I murmured. "What thing?" "Camping. Cows. Being stranded in a shed with someone who makes silence feel like pressure in my chest." His head turned slightly toward me. "That last one's specific." I gave a shaky laugh. "Yeah. Sorry." He didn't say anything, just let the silence return. But I could feel him watching me. Then quietly, "You think about things a lot, don't you?" "Too much." "Yeah," he said, and I heard a small smile in his voice. I noticed. I turned to face him finally. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "No," he said, his gaze locking with mine in the dim light. "I like it. Something passed between us, electric, invisible." My stomach tightened. I didn't know whether to lean in or run away. My mind screamed, "Don't ruin this," while my heart begged, "Please let it mean what I think it means." His hand shifted beneath the blanket, resting between us. I glanced down, my fingers twitching with the urge to reach for his, to close the gap, to ask for something without words, but I didn't move. Instead, I asked, "Have you ever wanted something you couldn't say out loud?" He was quiet for a moment, then answered, "Yeah." "What do you do with it?" He shrugged. "Bury it, or try to." The shed felt too small suddenly, too intimate, too filled with air that neither of us could breathe properly. My thoughts raced. Say something, touch him, do something. But fear held me still, fear that if I reached, he'd pull away, that whatever fragile thing was blooming between us would shrivel under the weight of the truth. So I sat there, every nerve on fire, every inch of me aching to close the distance, while his knee nudged mine slightly and stayed there, unspoken. Things hung between us like lanterns in the dark, flickering, waiting. Eventually, Eli laid down, arms behind his head, eyes on the roof. "We'll head back in the morning," he said softly. "They'll wonder where we went." "Yeah," I said, lying down beside him, staring up at the same slats of wood. The blanket shifted slightly as he turned onto his side, facing me. I didn't look at him, but I felt his gaze. I wanted to say me too. I wanted to say I think about you all the time. I wanted to reach for him and finally stop pretending. But instead I laid there beside him, heart racing, skin prickling with heat, where our bodies almost touched, and whispered into the dark, "Good night, Eli." His answer came after a beat, soft and low. "Good night." And though nothing had changed, everything had. The sun had just started to rise by the time we reached the barn again. Mist clung low to the ground, curling like smoke around the fences and tree trunks. Everything looked softer in the early light, quiet, untouched, as if the world hadn't quite woken up yet. Eli walked beside me in silence, the wagon long since abandoned until someone could fetch help for it. We didn't speak about the night in the shed, didn't speak about the way we'd lain so close neither of us really slept. I hadn't stopped thinking about his words. "Yeah, I noticed. I like it." They looped in my head like a record stuck on a single line, wearing a groove so deep I could barely hear anything else. He peeled off toward the barn while I kept walking toward the house. I watched him disappear into the shadows of the stalls, his figure swallowed by wood and dust. I stood in the gravel drive a moment longer, heart in my throat, before I turned around and followed him. I found him near the back, refilling water. troughs. His sleeves were already pushed up, exposing the tan line just above his elbows. The muscles in his forearms flexed as he worked, and I hated how badly I wanted to reach out. To touch. To say something that might ruin everything just to get to what I hoped was underneath. He glanced up when I entered, then looked back down at the hose. Thought you were going in. I was. I stepped closer. My voice felt too tight in my chest. I didn't. He nodded once, but didn't say anything. Just kept his eyes on the stream of water as it pooled and echoed against the metal. I couldn't sleep, I blurted. Eli cut the hose. The silence that followed was louder than any thunderstorm. He set it down and wiped his hands on his jeans, turning toward me slowly. I didn't either, he said quietly. My breath caught, but I forced myself to go on. Last night, I meant what I said, about your quiet, about feeling safe with you. I wasn't just trying to be nice. I know, he said. There was something in his voice, something soft and scared and knowing. He stepped forward slightly, just enough that I could feel the heat between us. I swallowed hard. I've been trying not to mess this up. Whatever this is, I've been trying so hard not to cross a line. His eyes flicked to mine. Why? Because once I do, I can't go back. And I don't want to lose what we have. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze moving slowly over my face like he was trying to memorize it. His jaw tightened. You think I don't feel it too? My heart stuttered. He shook his head, almost in disbelief. You think I haven't been lying? Awake wondering what it would mean if I reached over and took your hand? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat closed up and my fingers twitched at my sides. I was raised to keep things quiet, he said, voice rough. We don't talk about feelings. We don't chase what scares us. And this? He gestured vaguely between us. This scares the hell out of me. Me too, I whispered. The light from the window behind him cast a halo around his shoulders. Dust danced in the beams between us. I could hear the soft whicker of a horse nearby, the rustle of hay. He stepped closer again, close enough now that I could smell the faint scent of cedar and sweat and something purely Eli. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. I exhaled, something inside me breaking loose. I want you, I said. Not just this week. Not just in the barn or when it's convenient or quiet. I want you when things are hard, when we don't know what the hell we're doing. His lips parted slightly like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. So I filled the silence. I think about you every damn day. And every time I tell myself to stop, every time I say it's too complicated or too risky, I just end up right back here, standing in front of you, wanting more than I should. His expression cracked. I saw it then, clear as morning. The fear, the want, the war behind his eyes. He reached up slowly, cautiously, and touched my face, fingers brushing my cheek like he wasn't sure I was real. I've never done this before, he said, voice nearly trembling. Never felt this way about someone. My chest ached. You don't have to have experience to mean something, he smiled faintly, almost bitterly. You make it sound so easy. It's not, I said. It's terrifying, but it's worth it. The air between us vibrated like a struck wire, tension pulled so tight it could snap. And then he kissed me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect. It was hesitant and gentle and filled with every single unspoken thing we hadn't dared say out loud. His lips were soft against mine, unsure but warm, and I felt his hand tremble slightly as it cupped my jaw. I kissed him back, like I'd been waiting my whole life to do it. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke for a moment. Our foreheads touched. We shared the same breath. His thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, lingering. "This feels real," he whispered. "It is real," I said. "If we let it be." He nodded, but the hesitation was still there, behind his eyes. "What about when you go back?" I didn't look away. "Then we figure it out. Together." "I don't know how to do that." "We learn." He gave a shaky breath, then leaned in again, his forehead pressing into the side of my neck. I wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time since arriving on the farm, I felt like I wasn't just visiting. I was home. We stood there like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, the morning sun crawling across the barn floor toward us. No more pretending, no more silence, just us and the beginning of something we both thought we'd never have the courage to reach for. The rest of the morning passed in a kind of dazed haze. We didn't speak much after the kiss, not because there was nothing to say, but because we didn't need to say anything yet. There was peace in the silence, in the way he kept brushing, his shoulder against mine when we walked back to the house, or how his hand hovered near mine like it wanted to hold it but was still asking permission. By the time we reached the back porch, the sun had broken cleanly through the mist, casting golden light across the fields. Everything looked warmer, brighter, like the whole world had shifted ever so slightly into color. Inside, we made coffee like we always did, moving around each other in easy rhythm. Except this time, I couldn't stop smiling. Eli poured 2 mugs and handed me one, his fingers grazing mine on purpose this time. "You're staring," he murmured. "You're blushing," I shot back, grinning. He snorted, setting down the pot. "Am not. Your ears turn red when you get flustered." "I've known that since day 2. "Oh yeah?" He leaned a hip against the counter, raising an eyebrow. "What else have you noticed?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, holding his gaze. "You hum when you're thinking. Always something soft, like old hymns. And you never look someone in the eye when you're mad, but you look them straight through when you care." His expression softened. The teasing fell away, and for a moment he just looked at me like he was seeing me again for the first time. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You don't have to," I said. "I'm right here." Set his cup down and stepped closer, gently pressing his forehead against mine like he had in the barn. "What happens when you leave?" I hesitated. "That's the part that scares me too," I said. "But we don't have to figure out everything right now. We've got time, phone calls, visits, letters if you want to stay old-fashioned." He laughed under his breath. "You'd really write me letters?" "I'd write you every damn week if it meant hearing from you too." Eli didn't kiss me again, not yet. But he took my hand right there in the kitchen and laced our fingers together. His palm was rough from years of work, but his grip was gentle, careful. "I keep thinking about what people will say," he confessed. "What my family'll think. What the church'll—" "Then don't think about them. Think about this, about us." His jaw worked silently, conflicted. But then he nodded. "I want this," he whispered. "Whatever it takes." We spent the rest of the day together like we always had, but everything felt new, easier. Laughing came quicker. Touch lingered longer. While feeding the goats, he nudged me playfully into the hay, and I grabbed his wrist, pulling him down beside me. We lay there side by side, staring at the sun through cracks in the barn roof, our hands entwined between us. "Feels like the beginning of something," I murmured. "It is," Eli said. "A scary, beautiful beginning." Later, while walking the fence line, I stopped and pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" he asked, setting a reminder. "For when I get home." "A reminder for what?" I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "To call you. First thing. Every day. If you'll let me." He looked at me like the sky had cracked open and poured something holy over us. "I'll be waiting," he said, eyes shining, and for the first time, I believed we could make it work. Not just here, not just now, but wherever the road went next, so long as we walked it together. The day I left, the sky was heartbreakingly blue. One of those rare, flawless mornings where the clouds were cotton thin and the air tasted like clean hay and sunshine. If I'd believed in omens, I might have taken it as a good one. Eli walked me to the edge of the drive where my rental truck sat, dusty and sun-baked. The grass crunched beneath our boots, and neither of us said much at first. There was a heaviness hanging between us, unspoken, inevitable, but also something steadier beneath it, a quiet certainty. "I packed you something," he said, reaching behind him and handing over a small paper bag. "Jerky, those molasses cookies you liked, and this." He pulled out a tiny folded square of cloth, a handkerchief, off-white, slightly frayed at the edges, but soft and worn like it had lived a full life already. "My mom made it. I've had it in my coat pocket for years. I guess," he cleared his throat. "Figured you might need a piece of home with you?" I took it slowly, my chest tightening. "Eli, don't get sappy," he warned, his voice half a laugh, half a wobble, "or I might actually cry." "I'll cry first," I admitted, forcing a grin. He stepped forward, brushing his fingers along my jaw. "Then let's both be cowards and hold it together till you drive off." I swallowed hard. My hand found his, and we just stood there. A moment, thumb tracing over knuckles, breathing in sync. "I'll call tonight," I said, "even if it's just to hear your voice for 5 minutes. I'll be by the landline pretending I'm not waiting. Texting is allowed too." "That'll take some getting used to," I smirked. "I'll send you pictures of everything. You'll be sick of me." "I already am," he said, eyes dancing. "But in that way where I don't ever want it to stop." Then he did something that took me by surprise. He pulled a pen from his shirt pocket and lifted my hand. Right there on the side of my thumb, he scribbled a tiny heart. It was messy, slightly crooked, and faded almost immediately. "With the sweat of my skin. There," he said. "Now you're branded." "That's what you're going with? A shaky blue heart on my thumb?" "I'm a simple man." I looked down at it and smiled. "Then I guess I'm yours." The goodbye kiss was soft, almost shy. Nowhere near the barn kiss, all fire and fear. This one was slower, thoughtful, a promise. The kind you tuck away and carry across miles. When I finally climbed into the truck, he rested both hands on the doorframe, leaning in close. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "I still don't have answers. But I know this feels right." "That's all I need," I said. "Just keep feeling it. One day at a time. Promise me something. Anything. Don't let me get in my own head. If I pull back, call me on it. I will. And if you meet someone easier, someone who doesn't live in a world this complicated, I won't," I said, cutting him off gently. "It's you, Eli. I'm in, mess and all." He nodded, eyes bright, jaw tight. Then he stepped back and let me close the door. As I drove away, I watched him in the rear view. He didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there like a post in the earth, solid and waiting. And I knew, deep in my bones, this wasn't an ending. It was the kind of beginning most people never get to write. A long road ahead, a dozen hurdles, between us and whatever came next. But still, him and me. A quiet boy from the Amish country with calloused hands and a too big heart, and me, with a truck full of cookies and a heart drawn on my thumb, heading toward whatever future we could make, together.